This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Hey, brother, I just finished listening to your July 5th episode. Man, I just absolutely love your content, man. It gives me value every time I listen to it. It gives me a different perspective on how I view some of the stuff that I do. It's just always good, man. And I want to keep telling you the same thing over and over and over. It does affect people. It does change people's lives. And really do appreciate all of the effort that you're putting into that, because I know that you really got better things to do than this, but yet you still sacrifice that time and do it. So hats off to you, bro.
Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show with Jason Hartman. You're about to learn a new slant on investing, some exciting techniques, and fresh new approaches to the world's most historically proven asset class that will enable you to create more wealth and freedom than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine self-made multimillionaire who's actually been there and done it. He's a successful investor, lender, developer, and entrepreneur who's owned properties in 11 states, had hundreds of tenants, and been involved in thousands of real estate transactions. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to your financial independence day. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Welcome to episode 2177, and greetings from a mysterious city in Germany. Comment below, if you're watching this on video, comment below if you can guess what city I'm in. I'll give you a couple of hints. It's a big university city, and the university population here is a giant percentage of the overall population, and it's a very nice city. Very beautiful, very clean, very nice. I hope it's not saying it somewhere in the background because that'll give it away. But I'm turning around here so you can see some scenery and you can take a guess. Anyway, comment below if you're watching on a video platform and you want to guess where I am. And hey, maybe we'll have some cool prize for the winner. Okay, hey, we've got to do part 2 of a speech I gave recently in Orlando at Rebel Capitalist Live. We've got that coming up. But first, I want to talk to you a little bit about housing inventory just very briefly. And it is increasing. No surprise there. That's what we've been covering for a long time now, the increase in inventory. But we are now seeing it increase almost weekly. We're up to 634,000 homes for sale in the United States, still well below normal inventory. And what's important also is that the rate of new listings coming on the market is much lower than it was in many prior years. I'm going to cover that on a future episode when I'm sitting down at my laptop and I can show you the visuals on screen, because I do have some good visuals for you on that. Another interesting thing, I was reading today about a trend that I've been kind of anecdotally noticing, and that is higher end rentals. Now, these are considered rental properties that are above $5,000 per month, and they have been increasing. In fact, build to rent properties, single family homes above $5,000 per month are on the increase. So what does that tell us? Well, it's just kind of interesting because it tells us that there is a big demand for higher end rentals, and also there are people wanting to supply that to the market. So we'll see if that trend continues. I think it will, because I think it makes a lot of sense to rent a lot of times. Very, very sensible alternative, as long as you are in the game and you own rental properties. In fact, the best rental arbitrage is to rent a high-end home for yourself. Not that $5,000 is like super high-end or anything, but it's higher than the typical rent around the country, and own lots of cheaper rentals that you rent to other people. That is the best plan. Speaking of which, I was also looking at an interesting survey of rentals around the world, and can you guess the most expensive rental market in the entire world? Probably not a real tough guess. You might have guessed Singapore, Hong Kong, markets like that, and you're close, but it's Monaco. $19,000 a month will just get you a little measly flat in Monaco. It's an insanely expensive place. But, that's what happens when you have really favorable tax climate for people from all over the world to come and bring their money with them. They bring their money and they make the market expensive. All right, I've got to go. Let's get to our second part of my recent speech in Orlando. I think you'll enjoy this. And you'll also notice that just since this talk, we've seen a little bit of an increase in inventory again. But it's something to keep watching, nothing to be alarmed about, because we are still literally at only 50%, half of the inventory we need to be considered in a quote-unquote normal real estate market. Not a buyer's market, not a down market, not a recessionary market, just a normal market. We would need to double our inventory of properties. And we are nowhere near seeing that happen, but let's keep an eye on it as we go. All right, here we go to the main part of our episode today. Be sure to register for our upcoming Wednesday meeting. Those are the second Wednesday of every month. You can just go to jasonhartman.com/Wednesday for that, and be sure to join us for those monthly Zoom meetings.
So since the rates went up, only about 8 million homes have transacted, maybe a little more than that now, 9 million, call it. It's 140 million units. That means there's 131 million units where housing is not unaffordable to those people. Those people are insanely comfortable. They have 3% mortgages. They control the supply. They're not selling. We all know this, right? This is how everybody got it wrong. They simply looked at the new entrants coming into the market and said nobody can afford it. So nobody wants to sell it anyway, right? So that's the problem. So the market froze up. Now, this is changing very slowly because every time someone does a transaction, they automatically refinance because the mortgage is not portable. It doesn't go with the house or to the new buyer, I mean. So this slowly, the lock-in effect diminishes over time, and it's diminishing at a rate of about 4 million a year. But remember, we have 130 million homes to work through, and let's look at some stats on that. So everybody thought this was the problem. This chart, by the way, is the national payment-to-income ratio. When the rates went up, the payment got very high and very unaffordable. But that wasn't the issue. The issue was here, all the people that were super comfortable that had very, very low payments. Look at how low their payment is as a ratio to their income. They're super, super comfortable, and they're not selling. Okay, so Fannie Mae, at the beginning of this year, they came out with a forecast. Now, think about it. Fannie Mae is the biggest mortgage player on planet Earth, right? This government-sponsored entity. And they said that mortgage rates by the end of this year would go to 5.6%. Well, that's not going to happen. I'll just tell you, it's too late. Uncle Jerome Powell is pretty stingy with the rate cuts, as we've seen. We thought he would cut sooner, and I kind of think he should have, because I think that the bias of the Fed and the elites will always be to let the little people get screwed over by inflation and to keep, rather than break the economy. The only real history we have for when that didn't happen was with Paul Volcker, the Fed chair, under the end of the 70s and then into the Reagan era a little bit, right? He broke the back of inflation with those very high rates. But we're not going to see this year. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think it could happen by second quarter of next year. I don't know. Interest rates are impossible to predict because they're centrally planned. I don't know. But 5.6%. Let's just look at a few things. What happens here compared to what? That's always the right question. So first off, when we talk about housing inventory, it's important to understand that housing inventory needs to change and be adjusted based on the size of the population. Nobody's doing this, except me, I'll tell you, right? So I found this chart, which was hard to find, by the way. This is the total housing inventory per person. This is what matters, is the per capita number of housing inventory. And you can see it's the lowest it's been in 24 years, the per person housing inventory. All right? So here is the overall housing inventory. It's way up, but is this cause for concern? Right now, there's almost 600,000 homes for sale in the United States. But compared to what? Well, compared to normal, that's half of what it should be. Okay? There should be about 1.2 million homes for sale. But compared to the low point at Rebel Capitalist Live in Houston, it's more than double. So you can see all these sensational YouTube videos from, the Crash Bros, I love that name, the doomers that say, oh, housing inventory is skyrocketing. Yeah, sure, but compared to what? It's not even close to where it needs to be normal. And guess what? The 1.2 million number is from 2015. There were fewer people in the country. Thanks, Joe Biden, for not controlling our borders. That, and then, people have kids, right? Obviously. So that number really needs to be higher. The new normal is a higher number than 1.2 million. But inventory overall is extremely low. The normal amount is 1.2 million. Lowest about 240,000. Okay, so let's do a little quick visualization exercise. Close your eyes and just visualize your kitchen sink, right? And I want you to visualize the real estate market this way. So the faucet is the new listings, the new homes coming on the market for sale. You walk up to your kitchen sink, it's just trickling. There's hardly anything coming up for sale because nobody wants to turn on the faucet. They don't want to give up their cheap mortgages. The basin of the sink is the existing inventory on the market. Right now, that number is less than half of what it should be to be considered normal. The drain is the demand. That's the buyers. So the drain is the buyer demand, and the Fed has definitely destroyed demand with the higher interest rates. So the drain's a little bit plugged up. During the COVID era, virtually every property that came up for sale was being absorbed. A buyer was buying it, so the drain was wide open, and the market was just sucking up every new house that came up for sale. It's not that way anymore, right? Houses are sitting on the market for longer. Sometimes they're reducing prices, but it's hardly even close to being considered a bad market. It's not even close to being considered a normal market. There's still a dramatic low supply. So the drain is about 20% clogged. That's kind of how the basin is about half full, okay, or half empty if you're a pessimist, right? Okay, so, and if it was full, that would be normal. If it was overflowing, that would be a bad market, a buyer's market, a depressed market, okay? That's the metaphor for it. Okay, so let's look at this. So we did a study on the Fed pivot and what happens when there are rate cuts. I mean, look, we all know it's coming. We just don't know exactly when. So we use 7% as the baseline mortgage rate. And we thought, okay, what if rates go down by a half point? 50 basis point drop in rates. That means that now 2.8 million new households can qualify for a mortgage. 2.8 million more. Certainly they will not all enter the market and start bidding on properties, because just because you can buy doesn't mean you will buy, okay? If it goes down to 6%, another 5.4 million can now qualify for that mortgage. If it goes down to the Fannie Mae prediction of 5.5, give or take a tenth of a point, okay, that means 7.7 million new people can enter the market and qualify for the median priced home. What did we just look at? The inventory? How much inventory is there? Say the number, 595,000. That's the number, okay? Say you just look at a half point drop and say just over a third of those people come into the market and start bidding on houses. That's 1 million new buyers in a market with only 595,000 properties for sale. And there is no market where every house ever sells. Some just will never sell. Some people are fooling around, experimenting. They're just not really serious sellers, okay? So you can see what's going to happen. It's just simple supply and demand. I mean, if we get to this point where maybe 2.5 million new people come into the market, almost a third of the number that could come into the market, what do you do when you only have 595,000 homes for sale? Now, inventory is still rising, and it's probably going to rise by another 100,000. I say we'll probably hit close to 700,000 for sale. One thing I do want to tell you, though, is that this stat, it depends who's doing the survey, okay? Because the National Association of Realtors, they do a survey as well of inventory. But the problem with their survey, and the reason I don't use it, is because it includes pending sales and contingent sales. And those homes aren't really for sale, at least not yet. These are active listings only. But if you want to use the NAR stats, just always compare apples to apples and, look at what NAR said 10 years ago or 5 years ago or last year and what they say now. If you want to use these stats that are just active listings, then go with that. It's okay, either one, just apples to apples. So here's the makeup of the existing mortgages in the market. And this is why people won't sell. This is why you have a lock-in effect. 65% of the country has a mortgage at or below 4%. Almost 1/4 of the country has a mortgage at or below 3%. Here's another way to look at it, a prettier chart, same data. Okay, and you can see how few people have high-rate mortgages, right? That's really only the 9 million that traded since the rates went up, right? Those are the only people with high-rate mortgages. Credit scores, look, how many of you purchased a house since the Great Recession, since 2008? How many of you purchased a house? Okay, qualifying for a mortgage, was that easy or hard? That's a question. It was hard, right? Yeah, okay. They wanted your DNA test, your shoe size, everything. And it's like all these mortgages now, the vast majority are just very well underwritten. This is not the Great Recession with these careless mortgages with, stupid liars loans and all that kind of stuff. People have very good credit scores that have these loans. These are well underwritten mortgages. This is the loan to value ratio, the LTV. People have equity. They have tons of equity, nothing like the Great Recession. When you look at this one, right? Over 69% of borrowers have a current LTV under 60%. Their equity is almost half of the value of their house. If there's a crash and it goes down 20%, they still have a lot of equity. 91.2% of borrowers have LTVs under 80%, right? And see in bold there in this article, there will not be a huge wave of single-family foreclosures in this cycle. People just have too much equity, they have too good a credit score, and they have too good a deal to ever sell their homes. That's nothing like it was leading up to the Great Recession. Right now, 2% of the homes in the country are underwater, meaning they have negative equity. Great Recession, quite a bit different, okay? Right? Compared to what? Compared to this. 2% is not 26%. They're floating on the water now. It was 13 times worse than it is today. And look at this. Way back to the early 1980s, people had higher ratios of payment to income than they do now. So their payment to income ratio now is historically low, right? They have very, very comfortable payments. It was a little lower during the COVID era, but it's still historically low payments. So we have to get in the DeLorean and go back to the future. 10-year period between 2011 and 2021 will take the COVID era, right? The mortgage payment, 10 years before that, the median mortgage payment was $1,019. 10 years later, in the COVID era, people got a mortgage payment that was $18 less than that. They turned back the clock. And this is why they won't sell, because their mortgage is too good a deal. Look at the difference in the house price, though. Okay? The house price back then was only $225,000, and then it's $400,000, but their mortgage payment is cheaper. It's all the magic of those super low rates. But wait, there's more. Because in that 10-year period, according to the official CPI or CPI, right, the Consumer Price Index, inflation was almost 27%. So the cumulative inflation rate there with inflation-induced debt destruction, okay, means that the real payment today compared to 10 years earlier is only $730. Remember, they're paying the payment in cheaper dollars 10 years later because inflation has debased the value of the dollars. So the payment is cheaper. And the real house price adjusted for inflation is not $400,397. It's $290. This is who controls the inventory. All of these people with this deal. And that's why there's no flood of inventory. Look, what I always say on my show is there is one ingredient you absolutely, positively must have to have a real estate crash. Without this one ingredient, there can be no crash ever. And that is tens of millions of distressed homeowners who become millions of distressed home sellers. Now we have the exact opposite scenario of that. We have very, very comfortable people. Okay, got a couple more things before I wrap it up. So I read this book, Die with Zero, a couple of years ago. Anybody read it? Okay, it's not like the greatest book in the world, but it's just an interesting paradigm shift. And I want to just encourage everybody. And then I also interviewed Oliver Berkman on my show, who's the author of 4,000 Weeks, okay, which is the average human lifetime. And I just want to encourage people, because I had this big change in thinking, to encourage people, if you are at a level where you've invested right, or you know how to invest, and you have a business, and you know how to run a business, you know you can always make money, right? This whole idea of deferring gratification is very important in the beginning of your journey, because without delayed gratification, there can be no real wealth creation. You have to trade more pleasure today for a greater, brighter future. But here's the problem, and this is what the book enlightened me of. Most people do that way too long, okay? Guess what? We're all going to die, okay? So do enjoy your wealth along the way. And what that does is it sets up the psychology in your mind to know that it's abundant and you can create more at any time. So I just wanted to share that with you. And to that end, you are all invited, if you are an accredited investor. You may have seen our booth out there. We have a mastermind group called the Collective Inner Circle. And George and Ken and I, Ken McElroy, the next speaker, started this a few years ago. And then we merged with two great guys, Russell Gray and Robert Helms. So now we have 5 partners in the Collective Inner Circle, and our booth is right out there. And if you are a fit for this exclusive group, we are having a cocktail reception in the green room tonight. You can go get an invitation back at the booth there and check that out. And that's at 5 o'clock right after we end today. But I just wanted to show you one of the things I'm inviting the Collective Inner Circle on is I read Die with Zero, and I decided I need to start spending some more of my money. So I dropped $135,000 and chartered this beautiful yacht in Croatia. So what this is a mastermind experience where every day we'll mastermind for about 2 hours about investing, about business. You know, if you're an influencer, about growing your audience and about all these exciting things. And this is a nonprofit venture, okay? I'm not planning to make a penny off of this. I'm strictly inviting Collective Inner Circle people to just, anybody who wants to join and share the cost. I've got some other friends that are going too. I just encourage you, depending where you are in your journey, to start doing things like this, right? And it's much cheaper than buying a boat, because I used to own a boat, and that was really very, you know what boat stands for? How many of you have owned a boat? BOAT, bring on another 1,000, right? Everything that breaks on it is $1,000 minimum, it's ridiculous. But anyway, this is going to be a fun time. So if you're interested in joining us for the cocktail reception at 5 o'clock, go out to the booth or at the first break today. And also you can get your pins compared to what, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so I just want to close with a couple more ideas real quickly. I do have a little more time. So inflation versus deflation. What will the future hold? Well, I'm in the inflation camp. I think we are going to have a lot of inflation. Remember, I talked about following the business plan and aligning our interest with the 2 most powerful forces the world has ever known, governments and central banks. I guess above that is God, but, human forces, right? Governments and central banks. And there really is this big war going on in the inflation-deflation debate, because if you look at it maybe like a boxing match, okay, and you have in one corner over here, you have bad fiscal and monetary policy, right? And that is inflationary. We all know that. That is going to cause inflation. And in the other corner of the ring, you have technology. And technology is deflationary because it just keeps getting better. It keeps amazing us. I mean, the artificial intelligence revolution that we're seeing now is, in a year, it's just going to be amazing. Oh, we're all going to be dead and it's going to be Terminator 2. I don't know. It might go that way too. So anyway, enjoy yourself today and join us on the yacht. Okay. So this is the debate. okay? Some people will argue, like Jeff Booth, he was on my show before, okay? And he spoke at Mark Moss's event with me too. He would say, well, the future is deflationary because technology is going to, bring this utopia of lower prices and all this stuff. And, that's true. But the problem is technology, even though it evolves really quickly, it still has to go through evolution. One idea builds on the next idea, right? We all know that. But bad fiscal and monetary policy, the government spending like Ronald Reagan said, right? The great quote, he says, to say the government spends like a drunken sailor would be an insult to drunken sailors, okay? And that's the way it is. And so they can inflate faster than technology can fix it, right? And these two things are constantly at war. And I think that ultimately, sadly, from a philosophical standpoint, they will win. They will create more inflation. But as an investor, using inflation-induced debt destruction, I love inflation because I borrow the money at today's dollars. I outsource the repayment of that borrowing to someone called a tenant. They pay the mortgage for me. Plus, they give me a little extra every month called positive cash flow. And then the government says, we'll give you a big tax write-off because you're providing housing. Okay, sounds good to me. I'll take that deal. And then as time goes on, I pay the debt back in cheaper dollars. Inflation-induced debt destruction. That is the magic hidden wealth creator of income property. Remember how I said at the beginning, if anybody talks to you about prices going up and going down and trying to time the market, first of all, market timers never seem to win. But if anybody talks to you about that, just remember, it is not a shallow game of one-dimensional investing. Buy low, sell high. It's buy low, sell high, get positive cash flow, get tax benefits, get leverage, get inflation-induced debt destruction, add value through creativity. There's so many ways you make money with income property, and that's why it is the most historically proven wealth creator in the entire world. So look at this. This is an inflationary sign for sure, right? Blue line generates income to pay interest on the debt, the red line. Right? And now, because our debt is so insane at $35 trillion, that's with a T, that every 100 days, just to service that problem, we spend another $1 trillion. So we're going to increase, without additional spending, that obligation by $3.65 trillion with a T dollars per year. And that is very inflationary. Now, what does the government do? Well, they use Jason Hartman's trademark technique, inflation-induced debt destruction. Because all the debt the government has to pay back to China or whomever, they keep getting a discount by inflating away the debt. Pat Buchanan was on my show years ago, the presidential candidate and author Pat Buchanan. And I explained the strategy to him. We were talking about it on the show, and he says, Jason, basically what real estate investors do is they get to inflate away their debt on a sea of inflation. I thought that was very poetic, the way he said that. Really good. Okay, so income property is ideal. That's the acronym because you have income, depreciation, equity growth, appreciation, leverage, and then the bonus one is mine, inflation-induced debt destruction. Now, this pro forma, one of the things I want to encourage all of you to do as real estate investors, and 21 years ago when I started investing nationwide, and that was a really, really good decision for me. When I did this, I was looking at so many deals, and it was so confusing because it seemed like every time I looked at a new property, I'd have to be a detective. Everybody would give me the numbers in different formats, and it just drove me out of my mind. So one of the things I learned to do is standardize my data. And that is one thing you must do. You must have data standardization so you can answer the question, life's most important question, which is, compared to what, right? That's what you need to do. So this pro forma is generated by a software that I actually bought a few years ago called Property Tracker, and it's totally free, okay? So just go to propertytracker.com. Right there, you can get this software totally free. There's no obligation. There's no strings attached, okay? Just get a free account there. And then you can do these pro formas like this in about 3 minutes, okay? It just takes no time at all to do them. But here's what I want to show you on this before I go. You have assumptions down here that show your cost, right? They show projected appreciation, vacancy rate, management fees, maintenance fees, all of this kind of stuff. And overall, because you have a multidimensional asset class, look at the bold thing where the green arrow is. The projected return on investment, and if you look at this, it's on our website at jasonhartman.com, of this very conservative property in Huntsville, Alabama, is 29% annually. Now you might think, oh gosh, that's so much hype. You're full of No, not at all. It's a multidimensional asset class. You earn your return on investment in all these different ways. And that's why income property is the most historically proven asset class in the world, because it's multidimensional and you get your return in a lot of ways. As I always say, even if it only goes half as well as projected, what's half at 29%? 14.5%. You're going to be outperforming Bernie Madoff. And you'll be in control of your own investment because you own it. You don't have some manager that can take the money off the top, where you're investing in a Wall Street asset or something like that. Okay. So wanted to share that with you, and Inflation-Induced Debt Destruction, check that out, and say thank you to everybody and happy investing, rebel capitalist. And I'm here to answer questions, and join us at 5 o'clock for the cocktail party.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.